Gita Sugita Kartavya Himanyai Shastra Vistarai Ya Swayam Padmanabhasya Mukha Padmadvini Sritah. One of the shlokas that is chanted in the glory of or prayer of Bhagavad Gita says that where is the need to read any other scripture if you have read Bhagavad Gita? Because this has been spoken directly by the Lord Himself. All other scriptures either have been received by the rishis in their contemplation, in their communion with the divine, like the Vedas and Upanishads. Then there are other scriptures like these smritis, we call it, which have been written from the memory of the people or the rishis who have seen a story happen or some incident happen. So they are smritis. And then there are Puranas are there, which are stories which are mostly mythology. And then there are various other granthas are there, Prakarana granthas are there, which do explain these smritis and shrutis. Technically, Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata and Itihasa. It is history. And it has been written by whom? Vedavyasa. So is it a Shruti or a Smriti? It is Smriti only, because Vedavyasa saw the whole Mahabharata happen and later he dictated it to Lord Ganapati as his scribe, stenographer. So Vedavyasa and Lord Ganapati had a pact. Vedavyasa said, I am going to recite or I am going to speak out this entire Mahabharata, of which Bhagavad Gita is a part of Bhishma Parva. And you have to write. You have to be my scribe. And Ganapati said that I am okay to be your scribe, but Ganesha put a condition first. He said that you should not stop even for a moment. You should continuously tell this Mahabharata, and I will keep writing continuously. No breaks. No washroom breaks. No tea breaks, coffee breaks, nothing. You have to continuously tell it and I will continuously write it. And then Vedavyasa thought this Ganesha is extremely intelligent, and he may quickly write it and then I may run out of words and then he will give up this job. Then who is going to write such a big epic other than Ganesha? So Vedavyasa also put in condition. He told to Ganesha, you must not write unless you have understood whatever I speak. And only after understanding my shloka, whatever I am chanting, that is when you should write it down. So this was the condition that they had put to each other. So whenever Vedavyasa would need a break, what will he do is he'll chant some complicated shlokas so that Ganesha will take some time to understand what Vedavyasa is saying. And after that, he will write it. Meanwhile, Vedavyasa will take his little break and then come back and continue the dictation. So this is a very wonderfully, it's a story. And even if today, if you go to up there when we go to these Himalayas, to Badrinath, even further up from Badrinath if you go, there is a Vyasa Gufa and Ganesha Gufa. These are the caves in which Ganesha and Vyasa sat and wrote this whole Mahabharata. And they are not next to each other. It's not that they were sitting in the same cave. Vyasa was chanting somewhere in his mind and Ganesha was receiving in his mind and writing it down. But they are quite far from each other. But today also you can go and visit those caves. So this chapter, the most confidential knowledge, is one such chapter where I think Vedavyasa thought I better give some complicated shlokas to Ganesha so that I get some break. Teachers do that. Whenever they want a break, they give an assignment to the class. Finish this and meanwhile they'll go drink some water, coffee, tea. Coffee, tea is not provided generally here. So whatever, water or take a little break, throat is paining, so they'll take some rest. So this is a typical methodology and I think Vedavyasa used that. So this complicated chapter is confidential knowledge, also complicated knowledge in a way, yet it is very simple, Krishna says. Though it is supposedly the most secretive knowledge, nobody knows it. If everybody knows, then where is secret there? He says this is the supreme knowledge. This is the chapter's name. Raja Vidya. Raja means royal or the supreme. The king is the supreme most citizen of the country, of the kingdom. Like that, this is the supreme most royal knowledge. And not just that, Rajaguhyam, also secret of all secrets it is. Highest secret. That is this yoga, and every chapter has been called as yoga. Yoga means that which will help you unite your mind with God. So this chapter also, while we go through it, we read through it, we understand it, our mind gets further united with God. It gets closer to God as we understand this chapter. But the way it has been named, it creates curiosity. What is that secret? If you want to go and disturb somebody, you tell them, I know some secret, but I am not going to tell you. And then this person is going to go mad. He'll go and come after you and ask, what is the secret, what is the secret, and things like that. But at the same time, this is an open secret. See, the joke of it, the irony here is, though it's the most confidential knowledge, at the same time, it is an open secret. Anybody can know it. Then why is it called as the supreme secret when it's an open secret? It's because it's not given to everybody to understand it. Even if I tell this secret, even if I tell it in the language that you understand, would you understand this secret? Will you be able to experience it is the question. So deservedness to learn this knowledge is the most important aspect. And we have learnt in the previous chapters, Krishna says deservedness comes from Shraddha. What is Shraddha? Shastrasya, Guruvakyasya, Satya Buddhyavadharanam. Shraddha Sakatitha Sadbihi, Yaya Vastu Palabhyate. Sri Adi Shankaracharya, the best person to explain any of the scriptures. He writes in Viveka Chudamani, Shraddha should be there in the person if he wants to learn something. And what is this Shraddha? Shastrasya, to believe in the scriptures. Guru Vakyasya, to believe in the words of the Guru. Satya Buddhya means you should keep strong, steady mind full of faith and belief. It is true as it is. You don't find faults with it. You accept it first. Satya Buddhya. And what does it do? This Shraddha helps you to attain the highest wisdom. Vastu Palabhyate. Vastu is a synonym for that supreme principle of Godhood. So that can be attained by the one who believes in the words of the Guru and believes in the words of the scriptures. In fact, the way knowledge is to be attained as per our scriptures is there is a methodology. One is Shastra Pramana. You must refer to the scriptures which are written or have been spoken by those masters who have received it in their highest communion with the divine. It is their experience that they have spoken or written. For example, Mahabharata is written by Vedavyasa. This is his experience. Likewise, Vedas are there, Upanishads are there, and so many other Granthas are there. They're all the experiences of the rishis. So you must first go and refer. If I say something, just don't believe it. Go and refer to any scripture where it is mentioned already. So that is the first step of gathering knowledge. Shastra Pramana, testimony from the scriptures. 2. Second step is Tarkavadam. Argue it out. If it is said so, is it really true? It means experimentation in a way. You experiment it. You try to analyze it. You try to, as they say, you discuss it out. You thrash it out, as they say. And discuss, argue, debate, whatever the methodology you use, analyze, and finally come to the conclusion that yes, what is being said, it is true. But still you have not finished learning it. Why? Because this is just a theoretical knowledge. You have only learnt that what is written in the scriptures might be true. With all possible logic and rational, yes, it seems like it is true. But the third step is the most important step, and that is Swanubhava. You should experience it for yourself. I'll give an example. In the book, all students of science or any class can do this experiment. In the book of science, it's written, fire burns, right? Now, how do you have a self-experience of this? Take your neighbor's finger and put it in the fire. And if he shouts, you know it burns. No, put your finger. No, jokes apart. Anything has to be done like this. There is a theory, the postulation, theory happens, then we go and experiment it, and then we deduce, we find the results, and finally we come to a conclusion based on our results. So our scriptures have been very, very bold about it. See, many other people, if they teach you, they tell shut up and listen, don't argue. But our scriptures say no, argue. Come on, let's argue. Bring it on. Let us have a debate. And if I can prove it to you that what I am saying is right, then you must put sincere efforts to experience the truth. That is the condition with which these debates happen. And they were very constructive, positive debates. So these three are the steps: Shastra Pramana, Tarkavadam, and then Swanubhava. So here also Krishna is saying something to Arjuna. And what kind of knowledge he is telling about? Supremely secretive knowledge. Should not be told to anybody. Secret is that should not be told to anybody. It should be between two people. So this is a secretive knowledge, and Krishna is going to tell it to Arjuna. So far he has told so many things to him, starting with the advice to a confused Arjuna that he must fight the battle, taught him about the Atman which never dies, never perishes, tells him about the principles of action in this world, that one must perform action, undertake action, but also teaches him the attitude with which the action should be performed, otherwise it will become a bondage. Also further tells him who really performs these actions, the body, the mind, or the consciousness within, and teaches him about the supreme consciousness, Brahman, which resides, which permeates, which pervades everything, and that is what is our true nature. And further now he goes on to tell him, last chapter was quite a scary chapter, isn't it? Where he was telling him, what was he telling? How should one be prepared to die? We are all ready to live for 100 years, 1000 years, as long as food, water, shelter is all taken care of. But last chapter was all about how one should die correctly. And today happens to be Mahamrityunjaya Mantra Homa. And I was talking to these students who attended in the Veda Pathshala, and I was telling him, see, Mrityunjaya Mantra is not about praying to Lord Shiva, that please give me an extension, another extension. Nobody wants to die. It is not for that. Of course, it does pray to Lord Shiva. But what is that prayer? It says, Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanat mrutyor mukshiya ma amrutat. Redeem me from this bondage of death, he says. So people interpret it as remove death from my destiny. Give me a long life, healthy life. But they forget the second part. Ma amrutat. Don't let me get redeemed or detached from the idea of immortality. Redeem me from this mortal existence and help me to experience immortality. This is the essence of that mantra. Bodies come and go, that we have read in Bhagavad Gita so far. We all know that. But we as the eternal consciousness, Brahma, Aksharam, last time we learned Kim Tat Brahma, Kim Aksharam, all that he asks, and Krishna replies. We are that which is indestructible, imperishable. Bodies and minds are just an outer cover. The inner content is indestructible, imperishable, and it is the same in all of us, in male, female, man, woman, dog, elephant, even in the inanimate objects. The same consciousness exists, it is what is said. And we also deduce this further, saying if you break an atom further, what will you find? Lot of space in it. After you see electrons, protons, neutrons, and all the subatomic particles, then what is actually left there? It's a lot of space. But is that an empty space, is the question we asked. No, it is not. It is full of a force. What we call a unified force field theory at this point in time. It is still being explored. The string theory, still being explored. But there are 4 kinds of forces, we all know that. Nuclear forces are weak, strong. Electromagnetic forces are there, and gravitational forces. So this is what fills all the space within us, without us. That is why no 2 atoms collide into each other just like that. No 2 molecules clash into each other. Or no 2 compounds or whatever the object that we see, they just collapse. It doesn't happen because these forces keep us all in the shape that we are presently donning. So these forces are the ones which run the whole thing. So it's not wrong to say this particular force should have some origin, right? From where it has originated. Yes, this is an energy which cannot be destroyed. it is very simply said, energy cannot be created nor be destroyed, but it can change from one form to the other. We all know the basic principles of science. And energy can become matter, and matter can be turned back into energy. This is also basic principles of science. Same thing is spiritual principle also. This force is a conscious force, they say. It knows, it has some kind of an intelligence which is inherent, latent in it. Otherwise, how will one atom look different from another? How will these many properties or different types of things will happen? And how does all this variety happen in the universe? This is a conscious force. See, this part is being still researched. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. And a lot of very advanced research institutes are working on this dimension of science, which is at the edge of science and spirituality, is the cusp of that. A lot of people are slowly getting to understand, no, there is some conscious force which is keeping the universe together, doesn't allow things to collapse. And that they are studying still. But someday they will come to the same conclusion which our rishis have found out through their intuition. They did not really do an experiment, but they found out through their intuition, and then they further explained it, experimented, and experienced it. So this is how Bhagavad Gita is also about. It is an Upanishad. Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam. Every chapter says that. Upanishadi Nama Brahma Vidyayam is Shankaracharya's definition. All Upanishads are nothing but knowledge of the highest supreme principle of Brahman. And in our culture, Brahman is simply called as Prajnana. That consciousness is Brahman, that which helps us to experience everything else. That ability to experience is Brahman. That consciousness. So we have a conscience, and consciousness. What is conscious? This body, physical. Annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, conscious. Then we have conscience, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha. This is conscience, where we feel the prick of the conscience, as they say, within. You do something wrong, nobody knows it, but you know it, and then it keeps troubling you within. That is conscience. And there is consciousness, the ability to feel both the conscious and the conscience within. That is consciousness. That is this force, that is the energy, that is the knowledge, you name it call it by any name. That is the ability in us. The ability to experience the whole world inside and outside. That ability is called consciousness, prajnanam. That is what is Brahma. Our scriptures are so scientific if you really see. They don't talk about Brahma as somebody with 4 hands, 5 hands, 10 heads. That is Saguna Sakara Brahma. That is a lower concept. The highest concept is, the supreme most concept is that Brahma is Nirguna Nirakara. He has no name form. That is what all we read previously in Jnana Vijnana Yoga, or we read it in Akshara Brahma Yoga. Even before that, Sri Krishna mentions about it several times in smaller, big way. So now we have come to this chapter, having learned the previous chapter where Krishna says, see, if you die wrongly, you are going to get into trouble. And what is the trouble? That you will have to come back to this earth again and again start the whole thing from the scratch. It's like if you fail in the final exam, you have to come back and start from the day one. So that is what Krishna is saying. Only if you pass this exam, you don't have to come back. So for that sake, learn the truth and be free. This is Krishna's advice to Arjuna. Learn this truth about yourself and be free. But he also tells, whatever our thoughts are during the dying moments, they become the cause of our next incarnation. And Indian philosophy believes in incarnation, reincarnation, and the principle of action-reaction. This is our spiritual knowledge. In fact, somebody argued with Kanchi Paramacharya. He said, I don't believe in reincarnation. He said, okay, don't believe, but I'll give you a small exercise, just go and do and come back. And he told him, take a notebook and go around to all the maternity hospitals around Kanchipuram. And then come back and tell me what you observed, how many children were born, how they were born, what kind of parents they had, what kind of health issues they have. So he went around in one day, came back with some 20 cases. Had he gone to Sarla Memorial, he would have got it in one day, in one place 20. That is the pace at which they are delivering babies here. But he went nevertheless and went to all maternity hospitals and came back with his data and told Kanchi Paramacharya, this is what it is. And he said, what is it? So he said, some child was born with some health issue, born to some poorer family. One other child was born in a healthy way to a rich family. Some other was born with something lacking, let's say blind or deaf. Some other was quite healthy, but he did not have one organ. And all kinds of stories. Then Kanchi Paramacharya told, see, they are all born here for the first time, right, in the world. Why are they born so differently? They are all God's children, God's gift. Then why God has been so partial to them, that somebody is blind, somebody is deaf, somebody is healthy, somebody is rich, somebody is poor? This child has just arrived. He has done nothing. If he has done nothing, then why should the child have these different ways of being born? Then Kanchi Paramacharya explained that this is why we say that though God is impartial, in this chapter also Krishna says, Samoham, I am not partial to anybody, but whatever actions you perform, that brings results to you. And those results cause the rebirth. And in the last chapter it says, at the last moment, if you don't remember me, you are done. You will have to, whatever you remember, you will be born. Jada Bharata story also, you know. And what else Krishna says? He says, this is very, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. The one who remembers me in the final moments, he remembers God in the final moment, that person is redeemed. But we think, oh, it's okay, we will do whatever we want, and towards the last moment we'll start preparing to remember God. Not possible. Back is aching, stomach is not digesting, hands are shaking, and teeth are chattering, eyes can't see, ears can't hear. At that point of time, you think you can remember God? In this healthy condition, we don't remember. In that bad condition, only person we will remember is doctor. Where is my doctor? Why is he not come? Why he has not given? What kind of medicine he is giving? We can't remember God. So remembering God at the last moment happens only if you remember God all throughout. That is what I was telling to these people. Some 10th class children had come. They were asking for some advice. I told you, take one advice. Think of the last day of your life. Okay, it's not a nice thing to tell the 10th class students, but I nevertheless told. I told, think of the last day and think that when you are done, how would you want yourself to be remembered in the world? Good boy, disciplined boy, helpful boy, compassionate boy. Yes, we want to be remembered. So they took a week and decided, and they came up with all kinds of stories, how they wanted to be remembered. I told you, they have to write it on your tombstone, that at your head of the grave, what will be the message there about you? So they wrote and came. Somebody wrote, I am a person of great compassion. Somebody wrote, I'm a good boy, I'm helpful, and things like that. Then I asked them, how many of you are working towards it? How many of you are behaving as you wish to be remembered today? They said, no, we have enough time. We will work towards it, and finally we will become good boys. I said, but what if death comes tomorrow? Who knows? How do you know that you will die after 100 years only? You may die tomorrow. So what will you do then? Then everybody is shocked. No, nobody thinks that I will die. Everybody thinks you can go on living. That's a joke. When the yakshas, Yudhishthira, what is the biggest amusing thing that you see in the world? He says people live as if they're never going to die, and they die as if they never lived. They say, just now I was born, I'm dying already. I have so much to do, eat, see, enjoy. So this is the problem with death. That's why last chapter Krishna was so particular. If you die wrongly, you go through the darker routes into the lower worlds. If you go do right things, you may go to the brighter routes to the higher world, but again you will come back to the earth in the Mrityu Loka, where you have to go through the whole process again. You will not pass. Some temporary relief can be there, but you cannot get rid of it. So this is how Krishna kind of scares Arjuna. But then he tells, don't worry, it's not so difficult, it's quite easy. All you have to do it, sarvada sarvakaleshu, all the time. Whatever you are doing, remember me. Do it for my sake. This is simple. All the time if you remember God, any moment if you die, you will remembering God. So make it a practice to remember me at all the times. Tasmat yogaya ujjasva. That is yoga. With that you perform your duty. How? All the time you remember me. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. So we don't know what time the last moment is coming. Parikshita knew. We don't know. So we better remember God all the time, because any moment we kick the bucket, we die in a proper way, and we don't have to be born again and go through this whole thing. Imagine your wardens, teachers, again they will appear in your life. If you want to escape all of them, at least for that sake, find God. So anyway, with this much of introduction, and I'll take you, also you'll be observing Bhagavad Gita is getting more and more deep now. With simple principles like do your duty, don't be attached to the results, to now remember who you are and who I am, what is the truth. And here comes the biggest secret. And I will get into the chapter now with this introduction, and you must pay attention, because if you don't pay attention, what will happen? You may die wrongly, And if you die wrongly, then you will be born wrongly. And again, you have to go through the whole process. Again, I have to come back to teach you Bhagavad Gita and encourage you. Spare me the effort. Realize yourself. So here he says this Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. Supreme royal knowledge. Vidya. We have Avidya and Vidya. We talked about it. Vidya means that which helps us to redeem ourselves. All other forms of knowledge are not ways to liberation or redemption. They may help us to fill our bellies, look after our families, do some good work in the society, but that doesn't redeem us. That is why Shaunaka, Himhashalo, Shaunaka goes to Angirasa and asks, I have learnt everything, but tell me that knowing which everything else will be known. And then he says, Dve Vidye Veditavye Itihasma Yad Brahma Vido Vadanti Parachai Vaparacha. The higher knowledge and the lower knowledge. The higher knowledge is that of spiritual, lower knowledge is that of all the material world. We need both, he says. But the lower knowledge only helps us to eke out a living. But higher knowledge helps us to reach the highest state of supreme divinity. So we need to learn both. Unfortunately, most of the schools, colleges don't teach the higher knowledge at all because nobody is interested. They only ask, if you get this higher knowledge, are you going to get more money? Are you going to get promotions? Are you going to get more power, position? This is the lookout for all the parents and teachers and students. So they are not interested in the higher knowledge. So here Krishna talks about such people also, who are not interested in this and therefore they suffer. But they don't realize they are suffering, like the dog which goes on biting on the dry bone and thinks that the blood is coming from the bone and enjoys it, whereas the blood is coming from its own gums. Likewise, these people try to enjoy the world, not knowing that actually the world is enjoying them.